My name is Dale Manning. I'm owner of Custom Birdworks and the Big Game Connection, which is a taxidermy shop in Missoula, Montana. I've been a taxidermist for over 30 years, and in the last 5 years have developed a product called Habitat Rock. Habitat Rock is an artificial rock product that is widely used in the taxidermy field for building habitats, trophy rooms, and just small bases for birds and small game also. We started developing Habitat Rock in 2008. In 2011, we started marketing the product, and it took a long time as far as the research and development side of it to get it where it is today. We've got a wide variety of products, very user-friendly, easy to assemble, easy to paint, and you will produce exceptional habitat bases, trophy room walls, rock mountains, whatever application you want to use this stuff for. We haven't developed yet an outdoor application for it. We do have a sample in the outdoors right now to see how it's going to hold up, but that's going to be the next step with Habitat Rock is the outdoor application. So we're going to go through the whole process of using Habitat Rock, from design and composition to construction, and then finishing techniques also. I'm just going to talk a little bit about habitat and design. It seems that taxidermists aren't thinking outside the box when they're using their habitats. With this stuff, it is so versatile. You can create habitats with this that you can't create with chicken wire and burlap and the old rock method of carving rocks. For example, when I'm talking about thinking outside the box, I'm talking about, if this is the edge of a base, roll some rock off of that base instead of keeping everything contained within the base. Instead of building real square structures that we typically mount our animals on, use angles, and a foot attached here and a foot attached here, and we're going to build a rock around this structure or this armature to show you how it's used and to show you the design of not creating a square box. Let's get going. It's going to be kind of fun. You're going to see how easy it's going to be to assemble and paint, and we'll go through all the different products that we use along with the artificial rock, as far as the seaming compound, the paints that we use to paint. When we developed this product, the first generation of it was with a yellow foam, and then we changed and went to a gray foam. That way, if this stuff is scuffed after it's all put together, whatever, you've got gray underneath instead of that bright yellow. So that was one of the criteria for our product, was a gray foam that shows great detail. Another criteria for the product was that when you screw it together, it has to hold a sheetrock screw very well. So the instructional integrity of it is exceptional. Secondly, it needed to be user-friendly. And when I say user-friendly, you need to be able to work with it. You need to carve it if you need to. And so having it hold a sheetrock screw and having it be carvable was something that took a little bit to get down. But I'm going to show you how, if we were to screw this together, you can see that we're going to have a fairly large seam. So what we can do with this is we can run this knife down the edge. The foam is very carvable on both sides. And now when we bring this together, you can see how tight that seam is going to be. So it just is a lot less seaming work. One thing to really keep in mind when you're using this product is to not overthink it. And when we start building this base, I'm going to show you exactly what I'm talking about. The product comes in different size panels, and depending on what size panel you get, you just want to break it up into small pieces. And once those small pieces are broken up, you can start screwing them together and really create a fairly dramatic habitat with them. This is just a small armature that we're going to use to show how we screw the smaller pieces of rock together to create kind of an angular type of base. This could be a base where there's a sheep walking downhill on it, or a mountain goat walking uphill on it, or whatever. It's good and strong. First off, what I would do when building this base is I would screw a small piece on top to where the hoof is going to be, for example. And then I would use this. I would use this base to mount the animal on, so you can conform the hoof to the rock instead of conforming the rock to the hoof after the animal's been mounted, or the mountain lion paw, or whatever it is. So that's kind of a starting point. This is what this would look like after the animal is mounted, and now we're going to build the rock. When you're screwing the pieces of rock together, it's fairly critical to countersink the heads of the sheetrock screws. That way when we come over and do our seaming, we're just going to wipe a little seaming compound across them to hide that screw. When we're screwing this stuff together, with it being in angles, it actually gets stronger as we build this. And you can just see, I'm just taking some of these pieces that we busted up, and we're just putting them together. When I talked earlier about not overthinking it, just make sure you bust enough pieces up that you have lots of different options. I'm going to leave this seam open, or not open, but fairly large, just to show you on larger scale projects how, this gap of 1.5 inches or 2 inches can be seamed and hidden very easily. Another great feature is that every square inch of this product is usable. So don't throw any of your pieces away, even these small pieces. These small pieces are very usable. So we keep a box of all of these little pieces that we don't use after we've created a base. We just put them in a box, save them till the next time you're gonna be doing a habitat. So with all those different shapes of all of these pieces, you can see that we can find a home for all of them in a base like this. And if you want to create some different ledges and shelves and stuff, we'd take the knife when it's assembled, and you can see how, I mean, it is very, very sturdy, it's very stable, and you can actually carve right on it when it's put together. This little tiny triangular piece, we're gonna fit it right there. So as you can see, in probably less than 10 minutes, we've created a pretty cool structure that whatever animal is going to go on. Obviously, if this was a larger scale, it's going to take you a little bit more time to build. You could probably use some bigger pieces, but what we're going to do now is we're going to show you how to fill these gaps, how to seam it so it pulls the whole rock together and it looks like two separate rocks. This is Dow Interfoam. It's more of a commercial grade type of spray foam that comes in reusable or disposable canisters. So for our larger cracks, to fill them up so we're not using a whole bunch of seaming compound, we're going to fill those with this foam. Before we started using this spray foam in the canisters like that, we used to fill these larger cracks, and you still can, with paper. And it's a good, inexpensive way to fill the cracks. The problem is when you start seaming against this, sometimes on these bigger voids, when you're seaming, you'll push that paper in, and then your seaming compound goes in, and it can be a little bit of a fight. This stuff is very easy to use. We're just going to bridge these gaps, and then in about 10 minutes, maybe not even that long, this stuff will start to skim over. And when it skims over, you can push it flat across that gap, and it'll get hard enough to put our seaming compound on. So this is that large crack that we were talking about earlier, and we'll just come through and we're going to let this set up for a few minutes, let this tack over, then I'm going to push it down in, and then we're going to do some seaming on it. You know, you saw that armature that was underneath, and that was just done with 2x2s, but you know, to give you an idea, the stability of the stuff, it's very strong. That's with an armature. Even without an armature, this is a 4-piece rock that we just screwed together for demonstration. Screwed it together, seamed it. There's absolutely no foam holding it together, and I mean, it's very, very strong. One of the things that hasn't changed when we're putting our habitats together and putting this habitat rock together is our seaming compound. It's very basic, it's very inexpensive, and it's available to anyone at a hardware store. We use a combination of a sheetrock joint compound, which is a setting type. It comes in different set times. It'll come in a 20-minute, 45-minute, and 90-minute set time. I don't like the 20-minute set time because it doesn't give you enough working time, especially if you're on a large project where you have lots of seaming to do. You know, the minimum I'll use is 45, and actually the 90 is also really good. Sheetrock joint compound with cellulose insulation. Ground paper pulp basically is what it is. There's probably different things that you can seam with. If you have some sort of rock mix that you like to use, you can use your rock mix, but as I said, this is really inexpensive and always available. You don't have to order it. You can run down the street and pick it up whenever you need it. Basically, the mixture that we're going to use for seaming is a 1-to-1 of the cellulose insulation and a handful of the sheetrock joint compound. So once it's mixed up, this is the texture that we're looking for. The more cellulose insulation you have, the more texture that you're going to create. So if you have a really, really textured rock where you want to create that texture in the seam, use a little bit more of the cellulose insulation. If you have a really smooth slate rock or river rock, don't use as much cellulose insulation and use a little bit more of your sheetrock joint compound. So this is set for a few minutes, and we're just going to kind of push it in, flatten it out a little bit. It's not imperative to do this. You can, you know, if it sets up all the way, this is fairly set in here, you can actually come through with a knife and break it off or carve it off. It's very, very carvable. So if it was something that you had to leave overnight, it's not a big deal. You can come back through and carve it, or just break it off. When you break it off and carve it off, it comes off and creates a rough edge. Here's that large seaming area that we talked about. Head of a sheetrock screw there. We'll just come through and hide it like that. Another thing I'll mention is if you mix some powdered temper paint in with this mixture, it will dry. It's black powdered temper paint. It will dry basically the same color as the rock. I didn't do that on this batch of seaming compound. Probably it'll dry and look white. So we're just going to put some on here. I don't like to overwork this stuff and smooth it out too much. Since this is real angular rock, I want to keep my edges sharp. You want to be careful to smooth your seam into the rock to blend everything together nicely. If you want to create some cracks, you can just come in with a knife, and you can do this at about any time. Sometimes when it's set up a little more, it works a little better, but just for example, we're gonna create a little bit of a crack that comes down through here. You definitely want to texture your seam to create the same texture of the rock into your seaming compound. There's several ways to do that. One really good way that we found is you can tear a regular household sponge so you've got irregular edges, and just come through and press it into that seaming compound. You can also blend those edges with it. And that's going to give it some texture. Once this rock is painted, you're not even going to know that this was a seam. Second way that you can texture, and like I said, there's all kinds of different ways to texture. You know, everybody's going to probably use different painting techniques, and everybody's going to use different texturing techniques. But I take an inexpensive bristle brush. This is a 2-inch brush, and I cut it back to about 2/3 or about a third. Cut 2/3 of it off. It makes the bristles a little stiffer, and as you can see, when I come in, I can texture that seam, feather it into the rock. When we chose our base color for the rock, we went through several different colors to try to get what we thought was the best base color that we could do washes with to create a very realistic rock. Once the seaming compound dries, it's going to be a white seam unless you've put your black powdered temper paint in it. To blend those seams, if you don't want that white seam, the color that we ended up choosing for our base of our rock is Krylon Fusion, and it is called River Rock. So if you have Krylon products in your town, Krylon River Rock, and we can come through quickly. It will seal that seam, so it will accept the paint the same as the rest of the rock. For some painting techniques, that is critical to seal that seam. For other painting techniques, that seam doesn't even need to be sealed. So there you can see in just a matter of seconds we've hid that seam, and it's ready to accept paint. So we've touched briefly on design and construction, the seaming and texturing of the seams. And so now we're going to go into some finishing techniques. So what we're going to do is we're going to break one of these slate rocks off, and then I'm going to run the excess foam on the back of it. I'm going to run it through the bandsaw and flatten the back of the rock off, but we can break these rocks off individually. So now what we have is a couple of shale pieces. I'm going to show you a finishing technique that we use for when we're doing African game or prairie animals, where you're going to have a sandstone type of rock. So if you have an African piece that you're working on and you want to lay some of these rocks in around the base, use them for a pedestal, whatever. You don't need to do any painting at all. You can take a Krylon matte finish and spray the rock down. And while that rock is still wet, we're going to add some red dirt. It'll take a couple of coats, but it's very fast, and it creates a very realistic sandstone looking rock. And we're just going to set that aside to dry. You can use whatever color you like. This is some dust from eastern Montana. It's going to give you a yellow sandstone. So it kind of depends on whatever color that you want to use for the effect that you want to create. Very, very fast. I'll just do 3 quick coats on this. We'll let that set up. So I showed you the sandstone effect with the rock, and now we're going to do some painting. And there's going to be all kinds of different painting techniques that people are going to develop with this. There's a couple that I like to use. The first one I'm going to use a blackout, and I'm going to black the whole rock out, and then I'm going to wipe it down. That's going to highlight all of the detail in the rock. It's going to bring the lichens out that are in the rock. And with this step, when you black a rock out, another way you can do it is you can use brown, but for this example, I'm going to black it out, and I'm going to use a black wash. And it's just diluted acrylic paint. You can use tempera paint and work it right into the rock. But it's really critical when you do this step to make sure, this is that rock that I sealed with the River Rock Krylon to blend that seam in. It's really critical that the seaming work is sealed. If you don't seal your seam, then what will happen is all of this paint will soak in to that joint compound mixture that we used, and it will create, everywhere where there was a seam, it will just absorb all of the paint and it will be black. So make sure that your seam is sealed really well. If you don't seal with the River Rock, you can seal with a polyacrylic, you can seal with shellac, you can seal with all kinds of things. You just want to make sure, using this wash technique, that the seam is sealed very well. That being said, I'm just going to we don't use any release in our molds when we're making these rocks, and so there's no worry about paint sticking to it. I do have people call here and there and they'll say, well, my paint isn't sticking to the rock, should I wipe it down with something? And I haven't ever had any problem. I think if your mixture is way too thin of your wash, that it might not adhere very well. It might bead up a little bit. Just add a little bit more paint to your mixture, or you can really work that in with your brush. Okay, but as you can see, I've just blacked this rock out. And I'm going to come back through and just lightly take some of that excess paint off of there. You can see how that black paint gets down into all of the cracks and crevices, and it highlights that rock. So we're going to let that set and dry, and then I'm going to come back and do some dry brushing with some acrylic paints. This is acrylic paint in the tube, and I'm just going to be grabbing different colors and pulling them together and mixing them together. I get this at Michael's. You can probably get it at any hobby store or craft store, and it's the cheapest stuff that I can get. This is one of our small rocks that we offer that we did a black wash on. And I'm just going to do a little bit of brushing on it with some acrylic paints. The key and trick to painting these rocks is to not paint them. What you want to do is do some antiquing and almost staining with them. This is one of the techniques that I use that works really well. It's one of the ones that I always go back to, and you can create some really nice effects with it. Like I said, this was just blacked out, washed back off. And I'm really going to dilute my paints down. And I'm just going to come through and I'm just going to just do a little bit of brushing and add some color. Pull a little bit of brown in, and if it's looking too brown to me, I'll just come back through with my paper towel or cloth. I like to pull some green in when I'm doing it. And again, you just really want to make sure that you're not using a lot of paint. Sometimes we'll get in a little bit of a rut when we're doing our painting, and our rocks will all start looking the same. So it really helps, if you can, to just grab a rock outside, bring it into the shop, and your eye will draw in some of the colors off of that rock and make it a little different. I just added a little bit of burnt sienna there. Looks pretty shiny right now. We're just going to let that dry so you can get an idea of what it looks like. So I'm adding some color to this rock that we washed. And you know, in a spot, if you end up getting too heavy a paint, you can just come through with your water bottle and hit it. It will blend the colors and knock down any harsh areas. And again, if you have a reference rock, even if you don't have a rock from outside that you can grab, pull something up on the internet and look at it, and you can paint these rocks to look exactly like any rock that you can find a reference picture of. You can come through and highlight some of those cracks with a little bit darker paint, if you like that. And that's about as much color as we need to put into that rock. Like I said, you just want to do some antiquing and layer paint on really, really thin. Another technique that even once the rock is painted and it looks fairly nice is while that paint is still wet, you can come through with just a light dusting. This is just some dirt that we have outside, basically in the parking lot, and throw it on there. I'm just gonna give it a really dull finish. You can come back through after you've applied it and hit it with some Krylon matte finish, which will kind of seal it on there, but it just gives a really realistic effect to the rock. Here's a completed base using 3 small rocks off of that slate panel that we have, painted real quick, and this whole base that will be used for a ptarmigan with some snow and moss on it will took probably a half an hour is all to make, and it's a really nice, classy looking base. So I've showed you a sandstone technique, a black wash technique, and now I'm going to show you probably the most versatile way to paint these rocks, and it's just using latex house paints. The cheapest stuff that you can find. This gallon of paint costs, I think, $15.97 at Lowe's. Obviously, whatever colors that you want to get, I would just recommend some earth tones. This is a green. I probably have 8 or 10 different colors that we use all the time. Dilute it down 4 to 1. So you're going to use 1 part of the paint to 4 parts water. Once it's diluted down, we put it in atomizing bottles or spray bottles, and we just spray paint on these rocks. This is a flat interior latex paint. Make sure you get the flat. And for $15.97, you're going to end up basically with 5 gallons. You come through with some water, hit it with some water. This cream color is a color that really looks nice on them. And we're just gonna they're watered down, those colors are gonna run together. Throw a little bit of red in there, or maroon. And as you can see, there's no, you can use whatever colors you like on there. And again, coming back to, using reference. Come back through and we'll just speckle it a little bit with some black. And this is exactly the way we did those rocks in that ptarmigan base, that finished base that we showed you. So you can take a very large habitat and paint it literally in a matter of minutes using these. Here's some green, throw a little bit of green in there. And we'll just let that dry and show you the finished product later. This smaller rock is a rock that we painted by spraying the latex paint on and running all the colors together. The colors blend very nicely, but if you want to come back through and add some splotching to it of different colors, or layer some, say, brown and black and white to create a granite type of look, you can mix your paint with denatured alcohol. So just take your latex paint and mix it with denatured alcohol, and then you can splatter it on. And I'm just going to use a 2-inch bristle brush, dip it in the paint, and run it across my finger and put some splotches on this rock. What the denatured alcohol does is it doesn't blend with the waters, and so it'll create that speckling, and that speckling will stay there now. You can also do the same thing on any of your other rocks to create just a different effect. This is some orange. Kind of gives a yellow-orange lichen type effect. So here's a rock that we built earlier. It's all seamed, it's almost dry, and it's almost ready to paint. It's going to be for this coming downhill bobcat, and the third leg that's going to be anchored will be anchored to this rock out front, which is just one of our separate rocks that we have in our line of 13 individual slate rocks. So that's the way that's going to look, and that's probably a base that is an hour and a half to produce the total thing, and there's probably $40 or $50 worth of rock product used in that. So I would recommend that when you're using this product and you order it in, that whatever the cost of the rock is when it hits your shop, that you double that rock you double the price of that rock when you're pricing it out for your customers.
Okay, so I'm going to be painting this bigger rock, pretty much the same technique that Dale was just doing with the diluted down latex house paints. Here's a real rock here that I'm going to try to match with it. So we'll start with some of this tan. Now a little of the maroon or red stuff. Is there another? So this is that denatured alcohol with the black in it that Dale was doing here a little bit ago, giving it that speckled look. The other thing to keep in mind too when you're painting a rock is if you're rolling it around all the time, you're gonna get your paint running in different directions. Where with this rock, everything's running the way it would naturally erode and staining works. So if you turn it around to get an undercut like this, make sure that you lift it and let it still run the rest of the way that everything else is going. So now there's the real rock and the fake rock next to each other. So.
And something really is going to add, depends on how much time you want to spend on these and how much detail that you want to put into them, but this is kind of a light green color that, you know, with these lichens that are here, you can just come in and stipple in some of these areas. Some lichen. And you want to do that in irregular shapes. And if you look at these lichens, they've got a black background to them. So if we go over that black that Tyler sprayed on there, they've got that black background. And with no time at all, we've added a little bit more color and detail to that rock. Habitat Rock has a wide variety of rock products available with different textures, different details, everything from a small rock that you could put a harlequin on to our large panels that you can bust up and use in trophy rooms or to create custom rock structures. The slate panel, our river rock panel, we have 5 different panels of about this size that work for breaking up to build different habitats. And right now we're creating rocks that are going to be pre-made for specific life-size animals. The rock that Tyler painted is for a bear form out of Headquarters Taxidermy, and that rock will be sold with that bare form as a system. It's going to allow us to cut down on our time building these rocks, and that's kind of going to be the evolution in the way this rock production goes. I can see down the line that there's going to be rocks available for most of the forms that are available on the market. So as you've seen, using Habitat rock is really user-friendly, easy to use, easy to assemble, easy to seam, easy to texture those seams, and easy to paint. Habitat rock is located in Missoula, Montana. We have 34 different products available. If you would like to check our website out, it is at custombirdworks.com. Click on the Habitat rock link. If you need to get a hold of us, you can call us at 406-543-5501, and I'll answer any questions that you ever have to walk you through any of these steps that maybe you might not understand. And I guess if you're using my product, then I'm selling the product, and it's good for both of us.